In an industry where a company that's a long-term investment is hard to find, there is one gold company that may pique your interest for gold investing, and that is Sandstorm Gold. Sandstorm Gold is a royalty and streaming company that provides capital to gold mining companies in exchange for a cut of the gold that they dig out of the mine. And Sandstorm buys that gold at a low fixed price, typically around $400 per ounce on average. There are a few gold royalty companies out there, but we think Sandstorm is worthy of your own due diligence. As a disclosure, we are proud shareholders of the company, and although we hardly advertise gold stocks, we believe in the Sandstorm management, led by former executive of Silver Wheaton, Nolan Watson. Sandstorm is geographically diversified with exposure in North and South America, Africa, and Asia, and has 21 producing assets that have netted them an increasing amount of positive operating cash flow and revenue in the past 4 quarters. They also have 22 mines in the development stage that will increase their cash flow substantially in the next few years. Be sure to check out Sandstorm Gold at sandstormgold.com/invest.
Hello everyone, welcome to Wall Street for Main Street podcast. Mo is here, and today we have a new guest. We're going to talk about healthcare, which is a hot topic lately in the political landscape. So we have Dr. Elaina George with us. She's the author of Big Medicine, The Cost of Corporate Control and How Doctors and Patients working together can rebuild a better system. Dr. George, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right, before we get into details about healthcare, just give us a minute and just talk about your background and how you got started in medicine and how you decided to start writing about healthcare.
Well, I'm originally from New York, and I graduated from Mount Sinai School of Medicine, and I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. And I moved from New York to Georgia, where I was part of a large group, and then I opened my own practice in 2001. And I feel like I've been on the front line of all the changes in the healthcare system, because every step of my medical education, all of these changes started happening with managed care and the rise of the insurance companies and the movement of doctors from the front line of care to becoming basically administrators. And as a small business owner, when I opened my practice, we were hit with every change that came through. So I went from just seeing a patient and just trying to get through to becoming really enmeshed in it and interested in why the changes were happening and how I could navigate around them. So I ended up having a radio show. I ended up writing and becoming a patient advocate, because in my opinion, it's all about the doctor-patient relationship, and that's exactly the opposite direction of the way the healthcare system is working. So it was because I got tired of complaining, basically. Instead of whining, I decided to help, fix the problem, or at least educate people so they can have choices.
Yeah, and ever since Obamacare has been implemented, I haven't talked to any doctors or nurses or anybody in the healthcare industry that had anything good to say about Obamacare. A lot of people are saying it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of administrative work, and things like that. And also Rand Paul, who is also a doctor in the Senate from in Kentucky, he said the same thing that you are saying, that healthcare should be managed between the doctor and the patient rather than what we have today.
Well, you think about it, this is one of the most intimate relationships, professional relationships that you can have. You're telling somebody that you trust everything about yourself, and you're putting your trust in that person to take care of you, to help you feel better, to actually be your advocate. And we've had an absolute reversal of that, where the insurance companies and the government have literally bigfooted themselves into the system, and they become the middleman. And they're practicing medicine at this point. I'm fighting now over a year, going on 2 years, for a procedure that was done because the patient needed it. I went through the entire process of the pre-certification, which is really onerous. Did the case, the patient's great, and then they just stiff me for the bill. And that goes on every day in every doctor's office in this country. And for those of my colleagues who decided to give up and they don't want to play the game anymore, they've retired. For others who thought, I can take an easier path if I just become an employee, they've sold their practices and become hospital employees. They're not happy, by the way, either. And then there's those like myself who no one's running me out of my practice because this, for me, is what I was meant to do, and nobody's going to mess with me or my patients. So I've become, one of the growing number, thank goodness, of doctors who will not play the game, who will work parallel to the system to offer an alternative to our patients.
Oh, what kind of doctor are you?
Ear, nose, and throat. So otolaryngologist.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, what you just told me, that what I've heard from other doctors as well. A lot of them are closing down their practice. They don't want to deal with all the paperwork and all the bureaucracy that comes with the trying to treat their patients, and that's one of the concerns that people had before they implemented Obamacare. Actually, is that they once Obamacare is implemented, you have to go to the government and justify why you're gonna do this surgery or do this treatment or whatever, and it becomes a burden on the doctors, as you said.
I have to say that my first thought about the whole Affordable Care Act plan when it was first, brought out by the Democrats and the progressives, the first thing I thought was, it's not about health care, it's about control.
Yes.
And I was absolutely right. And it was about, sharing the wealth or wealth redistribution from the middle class, the working class, to the corporate interests and to the government in taxation. That mandate was just a yoke to put everybody on the hook to pay for things they don't want or don't need or can't afford. And I remember when it got implemented, we were seeing 1 to 2 patients a week in my office. I mean, it's grace of God that my office is still around because it was horrible. People would walk in, they'd find out that they had an out-of-pocket in addition to their premium, and they would literally turn around and walk out the door. So it became, it was challenging, to put it mildly. We had to think of all sorts of things. I had to do contract work. I had to do other things outside of my practice in order to keep it alive because I refused to play the game. That's unacceptable, that doctors are in a position where we have to, can we keep our offices open? Can we make our mortgage? This is not a situation where people are driving Mercedes and living large on patients, even though part of the sell was that doctors are evil and we just want to do procedures to make money. That's how they sold it. It was by demonizing us. And we didn't fight back in a timely fashion, and this is where we are. So ultimately, the pendulum is now swinging back, which is a good thing, because as long as it was not implemented, the rhetoric was, it'll be cheaper, you can keep your doctor, everything will be awesome, and you'll get free everything. That was what they promised. Jonathan Gruber just came on TV yesterday, or day before yesterday, and admitted that the whole point of the Affordable Care Act was not to give universal health care to people. It was to create winners and losers, and exactly that's what it did. So if you're young and healthy, you were subsidizing the people who are sicker. If you're a senior citizen, you have been subsidizing the people who are sicker. They took $700 billion out of Medicare in order to set up the Affordable Care Act. They don't tell people that. They just bait each other, people against each other, and if you have a question, then you don't care, you want people to die. It was really just the worst, the lowest common denominator rhetoric to shut people up. But thank goodness we have a possibility of reining this thing in.
Yeah, we do. With the new president and new Congress in power right now, Republican taking over Senate and the House of Representatives, and right now they're working on repealing Obamacare and trying to replace it. Hopefully, replace it with something. Anything unlike Obamacare. I saw Rand Paul's proposal. That's a lot better than Obamacare. So hopefully we'll see his plan get some traction in the White House and Congress. So that's something to keep our eye on. And yeah, I could share with you a personal story. I need to get an MRI on my shoulder because it was bothering me so much in the past couple of years. And I have health insurance, but in order for me to get an MRI, I had to pay the deductible, and then after that, I have to pay $700 out of pocket for the MRI, and that's a lot of money for something like that. So it tells you how
exactly
out of control the costs have become. And, the hospitals, or I think the hospitals, they're not very transparent on their pricing, and they keep jacking up the prices because they know the insurance is going to cover it. So that's another big problem that I'm seeing right now. So for me, paying $700 for an MRI is out of control. And if you look at the cost of healthcare the past 5 years, the healthcare premium has been up over 200% since 1999. So I want to get your thoughts now. What do you think is the cause of the increasing premium of healthcare premium? It was going up even before Obamacare was implemented, but obviously it's starting to skyrocket now.
Well, the way the whole infrastructure was set up, it was set up to do exactly this. You have to remember who was in on the implementation or the writing of the law. It was the health insurance industry, the hospital industry, the pharmaceutical industry. Unions were involved. These are the same entities that are the reason for the high cost of health care. And they got to set up a structure that mandated that people buy their product. But there was no, I mean, if they had just mandated that you have to list your prices online so people can shop around, they didn't do that. They had the health savings accounts linked to buying brand name medication, not even the generics. So they got to rig the system, literally, for the most expensive aspects of healthcare. It got doubled down on the most expensive delivery system. And you just nailed the most important thing that anybody should know and no one ever talks about. It's all about transparency. You mentioned your MRI. I can tell you, had you not used your insurance and had you gone to a freestanding independent radiology center, that same MRI would have been about $350 to $400, period. It's a fraction of what it costs when you use your insurance. And the insurance company has the nerve to make you think that they're saving you money. So they can jack it up as high as they like. The insurance company has the PR of saying, we've gotten you a discount. But a discount on what? On an inflated price, on an artificial price. If you go for a surgery in a hospital and you ask them how much it's going to cost, they can't tell you. I think they make it up as they go. But if you go to a freestanding surgery center where it's independently owned, they have their prices listed online. People should check out Surgery Center of Oklahoma. And you can see from the time you walk in to the time you're discharged, that's one fee, and they list it online. There's no surprises. They were so powerful in their city that people would go to their website, print out the amount for the bill, and take it to the hospitals and say, okay, I want to get the surgery. Can you meet this? If you don't, I'm going here. And the hospitals would literally drop their price to what Surgery Center of Oklahoma was charging. So imagine how much power as a healthcare consumer you would have if you knew what the actual price of something was. Not what they say it is, but what the actual price is. And another powerful thing is you need to go and say, look, I'm going to pay out of pocket. What kind of deal can you make me? And you'd be amazed. You get 70% off for surgeries in hospitals even. They will write off part of the bill if you had something that had been admitted and you want to go back to the financial services and say, first of all, itemize the bill because they're notorious for triple charging people. Have them itemize the bill and tell them, I'm going to give you this amount of money right now just to settle it. They will settle with you. These are things that people don't know. They feel like, I'm just stuck. I have no choice. But that was the beauty of the PR of Obamacare. They made you think that having health insurance equals access to quality health care. It's not. And you just described why, because you can't afford to use it. So it's like having a piece of plastic in your pocket, but not being able to use it. But everybody's saying, well, it's 100% coverage. Well, that's ridiculous. It's about the function of it. It is cheaper in our country to access health care if you pay for it yourself than it is to use your insurance card. That's a big take-home lesson for your listeners. Because when you realize you have those two choices to make, you're going to start looking at places differently. If they don't tell you what the price is, you need to walk away. And if you go online and start looking at the real cost of health care and say, I think you're double billing me or overcharging me, I'm not going to you, that's how this system will change. It's not Congress. I don't believe that the government is the answer for this. I think doctors and patients are. we need to build a parallel system, which is happening. Hopefully we'll get to talk about that. And that will put pressure on this artificial system to either go along or go out of business.
Yeah, the biggest loser in this Obamacare implementation are the patient, well, most of the patients and the doctors. A lot of people have lost their health care that they were happy with, and then Obamacare came in and they had to switch and get insurance over the Obamacare exchange, and a lot of the insurance is premium was a lot higher than what they had before. I just read an article where a Uber driver had to take a second job just to pay for his monthly health care premium, which was $1,200 per month, which for him, his wife, and his children. $1,200. He's better off. He's better off not having that and just paying the penalty.
I agree, and I bet he had about a $7,500 deductible for the family on top of that. Listen, there's something called medical cost sharing, which is written into the Affordable Care Act. It's a consortium of self-pay patients across the country who are allowed to pool their resources and pay for each other's health care expenses. So, 100,000 people across the country, for example, are able to negotiate much better rates for surgeries, for medications, for doctor visits than you buying it out of your own pocket. You won't be exposed to having a fine or anything like that. I joined one of these. It's called Liberty Health Share, and I'm paying $199 a month, and I'm covered up to $1 million per incident per year, and my out-of-pocket is only $500 per year. That trumps anything that I would do with any of the commercial insurance plans, and it gives me the freedom to go and do what I want. If I want holistic care, it covers acupuncture. If I needed a surgery, God forbid, it covers that. But they're negotiating the self-pay rate, not the exorbitant, inflated insurance rate. So this is a system that's parallel, that works for families. I mean, the most expensive plan for a family is $499 a month, which is, I think the Lyft driver would do a heck of a lot better with that one. And the out-of-pocket is $1,500 for the whole family, for example. So that's one avenue. The other is direct primary care. Doctors who are independent are creating, it's not a concierge system, it's like a gym membership. $60 a month, $100 a month for a family, that's kind of the average, and it covers multiple visits, anything that's done in the office, and you're not paying every time you go. So for my office, for $95 a month, I offer 15 free ENT visits a year. Anything that I do in my office is covered for that $95 a month. So if you have a cold, you have a sinus infection, I think that's reasonable. If you walk into an ER, it's $600 a pop, easy. So doctors are now looking at other ways to keep it cheap, to keep our patients happy, to be customer-oriented, and to keep the quality high and keep the middleman out.
Yeah, I know there's a hospital in Oklahoma where they don't accept Medicare or Medicaid or health insurance, but you just have to pay straight cash, and they have all their prices listed for surgery or whatever treatment you need. And I can bet that those prices are a lot lower than the hospital that I have in my area. I forgot the name of the hospital. I have to look into it.
Well, it's Surgery Center of Oklahoma is probably what you're talking about.
Yes, that one.
I actually had a patient go there to get a thyroid surgery, and it was a fraction of what it cost for her to have it done in a general hospital setting, where it's a corporate-driven hospital. If you want to go to those centers, this is a system that should be about choice. That's the ultimate end point here. If you like the Affordable Care Act, then you should be allowed to keep it. If you don't, then you should be allowed to leave it. And what's really awesome about the president's one of his first things that he did was he got rid of the mandate. So he basically said in his executive order that if it costs patients more, if they're going to be taxed, if anything works against the patient, then don't implement it. So the mandate's gone. That means people can't be fined. That means this tax season, no one's going to take any money out of your return check because you don't have health insurance. And that gives everybody enough freedom and, brings the temperature down so that the free market side can be implemented. I'm sure there'll be parts of people who will still be on the Affordable Care Act. If they have a Preexisting, if they don't have enough money. I understand that, and they will be taken care of. But the system never worked for the people who didn't meet that, right? So if you were healthy, young, didn't have many medical problems, or had the means to buy your own plans, you got kind of screwed in the system because all your choice was taken away. And all Affordable Care Act really did was expand Medicaid and Medicare. That's all it did. It didn't really change anything else, but it made it more expensive for everybody else. It's ridiculous. And it's not about winning. It's really about helping people.
Yeah, and I would like to see the healthcare industry be treated a little like how you can buy car insurance. Like you can go across straight line, you can buy whatever car insurance you like over online, and they'll give you a quote before you buy. And also, like, it only covers you for in case an emergency. It doesn't pay for your oil changes or something minor happened to your car. It doesn't do that. With the healthcare industry, the government forced them to cover prescription that I think it could be bought over the counter, like acne treatment, cream, or something like that. That would bring the cost down, because then people will be able to see the price. There'll be more transparency, and people can shop around and get the best quality treatment at the lowest price possible. That's something I would like to see. I know Rand Paul has his bill has something about allowing people to buy health insurance across state line.
It's all about competition.
Yeah.
We've gone from having dozens of insurance companies to 5. And if Humana and Aetna were allowed to join, we'd be down to 3. So you have very little competition. You have, in some states, only one insurance company in town. They get to jack up whatever they want on those folks. You have the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical industry, commingling with pharmacy benefit management companies, where they get to decide the formulary together. And we've seen a consolidation of the healthcare delivery system. We had dozens of pharmacies. Now we have like 2 chains, right? It's been centralized. It's been corporatized. And the choice is gone. And then you have the government telling you, you have no other choice. You have to take it and like it. This is not a system that works for people. It's a one-size-fits-all system. And ultimately, on the inside, what I've seen is patient care has suffered because of it. If you're a senior citizen under the Affordable Care Act, since it passed, you're on the hook for paying a lot more of your bill through no fault of your own. For example, if you get admitted to a hospital and they don't admit you with the right diagnosis or the right admission code, inpatient versus observation, and you get admitted as an observation patient, you're on the hook to pay every medication that they give you because you're considered as an outpatient. So your Medicare I think it's Part B, doesn't kick in. That's ridiculous. Or if you get readmitted within 30 days with the same diagnosis, the government won't pay for your hospital bill. So you have all these seniors who, through no fault of their own, have been really hit hard by this, trying to save cost and trying to streamline the system. It is definitely not user-friendly. And it's all about the hospitals keeping people out, because when they admit them, they lose money. If they keep them too long, if they have the wrong, if they don't use the right medication, it's so onerous now to take care of patients. The doctors and hospitals are really under duress. And, of course, the sicker you are, the older you are, the worse outcome generally happens to those kind of folks. It's not right.
No, it's not. And so another argument that people have against repealing Obamacare, that the people that have pre-existing conditions won't be able to have coverage. Now, I see them on TV all the time, in front of the camera, saying if they didn't have Obamacare, they wouldn't be able to get their treatment for the cancer that they have or any type of disease that they have, and stuff like that. Now, so how do we solve that problem for people that have a pre-existing condition that couldn't get health insurance before Obamacare was implemented?
Well, I agree with the risk pools. So you expend Medicare and Medicaid in the states for the people who need that, who don't have the means, who have a medical problem. You have money set aside for them, and you do it state by state. And maybe you might want to, I'm not sure how they want to do it, but you can set aside some money to fund that risk pool. or they would have done a much better job. They just expanded Medicaid and Medicare and didn't blow up the private insurance market. They basically blew it up so that it could fund the rest of this system. It's a tax, is what it is, but it's not a well thought out situation, because it's all about the government deciding winners and losers. You talk about people not being covered, but let's talk about Obamacare and what that really means for a second. When it first got implemented, the major cancer hospitals in the country did not take it. So if you got a diagnosis of cancer, you weren't going to Sloan Kettering, you weren't going to Johns Hopkins, they didn't take it. So you, by definition, were covered, but you didn't have the best cancer care possible. That's ridiculous. So while we talk about all this, hurting people from a theoretical point of view, in actuality, it hurt people when they carried that insurance. Independent doctors went off of it. Hospitals stopped taking it. Medications weren't covered by it. I can't tell you how many people I used to see under the Affordable Care Act where we asked for approval. They said no because it's not medically necessary. It's not covered. So I stopped taking Affordable Care Act patients. They had to come as a self-pay patient because we weren't getting paid, or they just denied the care. So people need to understand what the rhetoric is and what reality is. They're not the same.
Right, and I see healthcare as so I see the healthcare industry as an industry that has so many problems and so many factors that's causing a lot of problem, and one of them is the FDA. Now, if pharmaceutical companies or a biotech company wants to sell a product or drugs into the market, they have to get approval from the FDA, and that costs a lot of money, and they have to go through a lot of trials to get approval from the FDA. And a lot of people claim that the FDA is out there to make sure bad drug doesn't get implemented into the market. But there's a flip side to that. I think the FDA preventing a lot of innovative drug from entering the market and creating a lot of barrier to entries. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
That's a really good point. I think that there's a little bit of it's a little bit of a revolving door between the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry. I have a problem with that conflict of interest personally. I also think that it's so politicized and there's so much money floating around that seems to take the precedent over getting things out to the market quickly. And I think it would probably be the best scenario is you cannot be in the FDA if you work for a pharmaceutical company or headed one. It's just not right. And if there is an orphan drug, if there is a disease that doesn't have any treatment, but there is something, maybe they should fast track it. That would be nice to see that change. Hopefully, the new government will start getting rid of some of those regulations that lead to that. And, backing up a bit about the medication, opening up to medications from Europe or Canada, just because it's not approved here doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to access those medications when they've been proved to work in other countries. I think that would be nice for patients as well. Again, it's about competition and choice. If doctors have more choices for their patients and the patients know about it, it can only improve healthcare delivery.
Yeah, and everybody owns their own body. The government does not own anybody's health. I believe people should make their own choices. And there's a lot of, thanks to the internet, there's a lot of information out there that tell you which drugs are good and which drugs are bad. There's a newsletter called Worst Pill, Best Pills, and I think I've read that they're a lot better than the FDA at determining which drug is good and which drugs are bad. There's a claim out there that any drugs that they think are bad that the FDA approve, eventually the FDA finds out and pulls it out of the market. So that's how accurate they are. I don't know if that's true or not, but somebody told me that. So that's something people want to check out if they want to find out more information about drug and treatment. So yeah, so there's the internet now that has wealth of information for people to make choices, informed choices, so they don't endanger their own health. So I just want to, before I let you go, one final question I have for people that don't have health care, like entrepreneurs, self-employed people, people that can't afford Obamacare, that paying the penalty. What can they do?
Well, the good news is the folks don't have to pay the penalty anymore. That executive order wiped that out. So thank goodness that's gone.
Yes.
But the health sharing ministries, Liberty Health Share, they can go to libertyoncall.org. There's Samaritan. There's MediBid, which is a bidding site that you can go and put in what you want done, and doctors all over the country will bid for your services, for your treatment. So there's a lot of ways that you can use the free market system, like as a healthcare consumer. You can go to websites, Surgery Center of Oklahoma. You can do MedRetreat, which is a medical tourism website, and they actually will send you out of the country or in the country, and it's all one fee for the doctor for their services, and it's much cheaper than using the hospital maybe in your city. So you can do direct primary care. You can go to my website, drelainageorge.com, and I have links to most of these things that I'm talking about, pretty much all of them actually. Or you can go to the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons, aapsonline.org. That's a listing of doctors across the country who take patients who have cash only, who have direct primary care. It's kind of a clearinghouse, and educate yourself. The bottom line is, it's all about not being one size fits all. If you want to have a standard insurance plan, then by all means, that's great. But realize that you're going to be paying more for the premium and more for the services. And hopefully when Rand Paul and President Trump get together, they'll have, where you can buy across state lines, that you can pool, like construction folks pooling together, or offices pulling their employees together to become an entity that can bargain for cheaper premiums. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but that's the key. You have to find what works best for you and your family. But just realize the more you control the purse strings, the more power you have. And I really discuss this at length in my book, on the Big Medicine book. It tells you how we got here. This is not by accident that this has become a centralized, almost a universal healthcare system is what they were leaning towards or moving us towards. And the more power you have, the more educated you are, the more you can make conscious decisions, whether that's staying in Obamacare or whether that's going totally free market. I'm a businesswoman. I put my office staff on medical cost sharing, and I'm paying less than $1,000 for 3 people. Everybody goes to the doctor now without being bankrupted. And it's a great deal for my office and my employees. I couldn't have afforded to do that had I tried to stay in the commercial insurance market. And if that's something that you're into, and you want to take your power back, and you want your privacy back, then you need to stay out of the commercial insurance market plan. And hopefully they'll come back with catastrophic, so you're only covered for the major, things, major outlays, but not the first dollar. That keeps it cheap for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. Health insurance is good. It's meant to protect your life for emergency or major tragedies. It's not meant to be pay for your everyday medical treatment, like a prescription drug or something minor like that. I think it should be reserved just for emergencies and major tragedies. It's like life insurance and car insurance, same thing. But Dr. Elaina George, thank you for your time. And I know you just mentioned your website. If you don't mind, you mentioned it one more time so people can find out more about you.
It's Dr. Elaina, Elaina, George, like the man's name.com. I also write a blog, and I have a radio show called Medicine on Call, which runs live on America's Web Radio Wednesday mornings, Eastern Time, 9 to 10 a.m.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully you can come back on again soon. If you see major development happening with the Obamacare repeal or replacement, maybe you come back on and talk about it.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.